The wind in Dry Creek had a mean sense of humor. It whistled down the empty street like it was mocking the silence, carrying gossip quicker than a telegraph wire and twice as sharp. By the time Clara Mayfield's boots hit the ground from that lurching stagecoach, the whole town had already decided who she was. Some desperate widow in calico who'd come begging for a man. And judging by the way Jedediah Boone barely tipped his hat at her, you'd think she'd been delivered by mistake. Clara stood in the dust, clutching her small trunk as eyes peeled at her from every porch. She wanted to laugh, to say something sarcastic just to break the spell of staring. Well now, don't everyone sprain their necks. But her tongue was trained in silence, in bearing the weight of disapproval without flinching. She wore her composure the way some women wore jewels. Jedediah Boone was taller than she expected. The man looked carved, not born, jaw cut from granite, shoulders broad as a barn beam, eyes the kind you couldn't read even if you had all the time in the world. He said only, "Miss Mayfield." And then, after a pause that could have grown corn in it, "This way." That was it. No welcome, no warmth. Just a man with calloused hands leading her away while whispers followed, thin as smoke. Mail order bride. Poor soul, didn't he just want a housekeeper? The Boone Ranch was 2 miles outside town, a lonely stretch of land where the prairie grass bowed and bent as though the whole world was tired. Inside the cabin, Clara found small signs of life, a pair of tiny shoes by the hearth, a rag doll missing an eye on the table. Then she saw her, Eliza Boone, 6 years old, hair tangled like thistle, eyes the color of dusk. She didn't speak, only stared from behind her doll, cautious as a fawn. Clara knelt, smiled, and said hello in a voice soft enough not to spook her. No reply came, just that stare, wide and searching, as though the child had been waiting for something that never arrived. At supper, Jedediah said little. Clara tried, asking about the ranch, about the weather, even about the cattle. He answered in single words, nods, or nothing at all. The silence pressed heavier than the prairie sky. That night, Clara overheard him outside with the pastor, voices low but carried on the wind. "She seems too hopeful," Jedediah muttered. "I've nothing to give her but work and silence. Maybe I made a mistake." Clara sat in the dark kitchen, spine rigid, shame burning her cheeks. A mistake. That's all she was. A miscalculation. An unwanted burden wrapped up in lace. It might have stayed that way, Clara quietly packing her trunk to leave before dawn, if not for the child. Small fingers tugged at her sleeve, and a whisper floated up through the stillness. "Can you be my mommy?" The words pierced her like a hymn sung too close to the bone. Clara turned and found Eliza there, clutching the one-eyed doll, her face pale with something that looked too old for 6 years. And Clara, who had thought herself unwanted, unseen, unchosen, felt her heart break wide enough to let the child in. That was the moment she stayed. Not for Jedediah's silence, not for the town's judgment, but for that whisper of need. Days turned into weeks. Clara worked the ranch kitchen, mended torn shirts, braided Eliza's hair with patient fingers. At church, the women whispered behind hymnals, pity curdling into cruelty. She begged her way into that house, a widow desperate enough to marry a stone. Clara swallowed the words like bitter medicine, never letting her face show the sting. Jedediah stayed a man of few words. He kept to the barn, to the fields, to his silences. Yet he noticed things. He noticed Eliza humming a tune Clara had taught her. He noticed the child's shoulders no longer hunched like she was bracing for a storm. And once, only once, he left an apple on the table before dawn, its skin polished red as though he'd thought of her in the night. Clara found it, lifted it in her palm, and thought with a dry laugh, lavish gifts, indeed. But she ate it slowly, every bite a secret acknowledgement. Eliza clung more to Clara with each day. At school, when other children mocked her doll, Clara stitched it new clothes. When nightmares stirred the child awake, Clara sat by her bedside, humming lullabies remembered from her own mother's lips. For Eliza, she became anchor, shelter, and voice. And for Clara, it was the first time in years she felt necessary for more than labor. But gossip can choke like weeds. One afternoon, Clara overheard 2 men outside the mercantile. Boone didn't send for her out of love. He needed someone to keep house or the bank would have eaten him alive. She's just hired help he don't have to pay. The word struck with cruel accuracy. Was that all she was? Useful, convenient, not wanted, only tolerated. That evening, after enduring sharp looks at church and Jedediah's endless silences, Clara walked alone to the riverbank. The water moved slow, heavy with mud, and she thought of the stagecoach rolling away, of disappearing into the dust, leaving this hollow attempt behind. But then, soft footsteps. Eliza stood there, doll in hand, eyes round with fear. "Don't leave," she whispered. "If you go, I'll have no one." Clara knelt, pulled the child into her arms, and in that embrace, she realized the truth. She wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. She had already chosen. The next morning, Clara found Jedediah in the barn. He stood by the stall, back stiff, hands busy with pointless work just to avoid her gaze. Clara steadied her breath and said, "You wanted a worker, and I've done that. But your daughter asked for a mother. I won't fail her. Still, I won't live as a ghost in your house either." Her voice was calm, but every word was carved from the stone of her resolve. She did not shout, did not weep. She simply told the truth, and it hung there like the toll of a church bell. Jedediah froze. His jaw worked as though he were chewing on all the words he'd swallowed these past years. Finally, haltingly, he spoke. "After my wife died, I forgot how to speak. Forgot how to let anyone know. I didn't ask you to fix me, but I see how you've given Eliza her smile back. And maybe me too." It wasn't poetry, but it was enough. He didn't reach for her. He simply walked back to the cabin with her beside him. That night, for the first time, his chair scraped against the kitchen floor as he sat at her table. Supper was eaten in silence, but not the suffocating kind. This silence carried possibility, a seed of something tender. In the weeks that followed, Clara walked through town with Jedediah and Eliza on either side. The whispers still came, but they no longer pierced. She wasn't a mistake, or a burden, or a hired hand. She was mother, partner, and, though the word was never spoken, wife in every way that mattered. One evening, as the prairie sky bled golden violet, Clara tucked Eliza into bed. The little girl's eyes fluttered, heavy with sleep, and she whispered, "You stayed." Clara brushed the child's hair back and smiled, her own voice steady and soft. "Yes, darling. Sometimes the heart isn't claimed with thunder, but with a whisper brave enough to be heard. And if you listen close, dear soul, you will hear the truth too. We are never defined by those who reject us. We are defined by the small hands that reach for us in the dark, and the quiet love that chooses us when we least expect it."